given some direction to let go of that particular part of my training and to be of service in a different way.
Well, that was
That
to
would
our
be,
benefit.
oh, well, thanks. Yeah, I hope so. It's the next part of the journey, basically. Yeah. Um, yeah, very grateful to have been a monk and I'm still very connected to the monastery and be of service there, just in a different way now.
Well, they wanted me to introduce you, so I'm just going to list off a few of your accomplishments. You're the co-founder at Meaningful Life Program. You're the founder of A Way of Compassion Dharma Center. You're the co-founder of Mindfulness in Recovery. You're the former director at Garden Charts, a cultural foundation, and a former teacher at Jordan High School in Long Beach. And you studied at California State University, Northridge. You went to Blair High, and you now live in Carbondale, Colorado, and you're from Pasadena, California,
And a recovering knucklehead.
and a recovering knucklehead.
Yeah. My greatest accomplishment.
Well, I can relate to
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks. Such a joy to be with all of you. It's my understanding that you're going to be exploring the book, The Wisdom of Meaningful Life. Is that correct?
It is.
All right. Yeah. May the force be with you. Uh, yeah. So as Chuck mentioned, yeah, a couple things, but fundamentally, I think the opportunity that has been afforded me really is really began with a mom who took care of 9 kids. Mom, single mom. Dad died when I was very young, and I'm 8 out of 9. And this mother of mine took on a couple of different jobs, raised 9 kids, took us to church, never gave up on us. And the environment I grew up in, we didn't have money, and drugs and violence were, just a part of the culture. And my older brothers wound up getting caught up in addiction. Eventually, I would as well. And when I think about all the things in life, the adversities, the challenges, I think what really changed everything for all of us was my mom's incredible love and dedication to making sure that we're going to be okay. And by the time she died, all of my older brothers were deeply involved in recovery. I was in recovery. She died in her 80s, and we were all there and able to let my mom know it's okay to go, Mom. We're okay. That's what moms worry about, right? Their kids. And all of us had attained long-term recovery. We now become better people. And and that's 5 males. She had 9 kids, but 5 of us males were caught up in that. And at that point, I was actually a Buddhist monk. So we got to attend to her in her time of transition, really letting her know that we're okay. And I think that really speaks to the heart of lessons in my life. 41 years ago is when I began my journey of recovery. And the uh, the main primary thing, there's these things they teach you. Uh, there's steps involved in recovery and things of that nature. But there was a fundamental thing that was taught to me early on, and it's been core ever since. And I think it was demonstrated by my mom. And they taught me the most important question I could ask. And I'd been asking the wrong question my whole life. And I think most humans ask the wrong question. It's a normal question. It seems like it's a valid question. It's just probably not the most important. And that's, what can I do to feel okay? Right? Breakfast, what'll taste good? What do I get to do today? It'll be fun. It's a pretty normal question, right? What can I do to feel good? What'll be pleasurable? And so, it's a valid question. But they taught me that the most important question is not that. As a matter of fact, chasing things to feel good was the source of a lot of my suffering. They taught me to ask the question, how can I be helpful? Now, that was a game changer. How can I be helpful? Because that's actually how you get to feel good about who you are. And, the source of genuine, lasting happiness and well-being, well, that can never come from chasing hedonic pleasures, that come and go. Those are transient. But it does come from doing things you feel good about. So instead of doing things to make me feel good, they taught me to do things I feel good about. And that changed everything. There was this very shame-based, knucklehead kid, I was 22 at the time, who had done a lot of harm, who had lost, literally everything in my life. And you'll find out more about that in the book, and was, reduced to living on my mom's couch. I'd lost everything, daughters, family, and self-worth, self-esteem. And by asking this question, when you start doing things to be helpful, you actually start feeling helpful. And that wow, now, you actually have something to offer the world. You have something to offer. You have some value. And so that became this guiding principle in my life. And by doing that, this shame-based, really distraught, lack of self-worth, traumatized young man, started to change his life. And, and my little careers, back then, I was got a job delivering auto parts at an auto parts store, but I want to be helpful, so I want to be a good employee, and so make sure that parts got delivered, the right things got delivered, and that eventually led to being an auto parts person, and that's back when they had books you had to read in the big stacks. So you had to look up parts, and then ultimately the manager of the auto parts store, by being helpful, right? Things happen, and at one point I became an auto mechanic. Well, at least that's the label they gave me. I don't know if I was ever really an auto mechanic. I mean, I have way too much respect for auto mechanics to think I was one. I was able to work in a shop and bolt and unbolt parts and put brakes on cars and do things like that. And still do a little bit of that today. I like it. But and what happened in this journey is I'm finding self-worth, I'm being helpful, and I'm helping people in recovery, and I'm learning this very simple task of trying to be helpful. And there's a book I read, it's actually quite a spiritual book, called A New Pair of Glasses. And this wise elder said that we should do life for fun and for free. And I thought, wow, for fun and for free, right? That, I didn't pick jobs for the income, you know. I thought of work as an opportunity to be helpful. And if I'm working on someone's car, I would like their brakes to work. I'd like their, wheels to be bolted on properly. Want them to be safe. I want them to be able to trust what we do. And so, what I found is I could be of service to anyone. It didn't matter what the job was, whether, back in the old times, I was a dishwasher at a truck stop. I didn't have the spiritual thing back then, but, people need clean dishes, right? And food and nourishment. And so in this capacity of just being involved in the auto repair industry, how can I be helpful? And I got to work with my mind a little bit. I remember once, because I'm low man in the totem pole. I'm working with these guys, and they know what they're doing. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm learning. And at the end of the day, we clean the shop. And so I'm there mopping the floor, scrubbing down the shop, and they're like fixing the car and doing these other things. And my mind's going, you know, they get to do this. Why am I, mopping the floor? And it occurred to me, I got paid the same whether I'm mopping the floor or whether I'm fixing the car. And my only struggle was in my mind, right? My self-worth, my value. And I realized that, this is not hard to mop a floor, believe it or not. It's not very difficult. And sweeping a floor is not difficult. Cleaning a shop is not difficult. What was making it difficult was my resistance. What was making it difficult was my ego. It was making it difficult. And I'd lost. I'm here to be helpful, right? How can I be helpful? And what happened during this time in my life is I realized that if I was interested in something, it wasn't difficult. And what made things difficult was my resistance to them. And I was reflecting on, I used to play basketball, and basketball is very physical. You run up and down the court, it's just, very difficult physically. A lot more difficult than fixing a car physically. And yet one was work and the other was recreation. I could play basketball for hours, but I don't want to put this transmission in all day. And what occurred to me was my pain or my happiness had very little to do with what I was doing. It had everything to do with why I'm doing it. And when I recognized that what I was doing was meaningful, well, it became very interesting. And when I'm interested in something, it's amazing what we'll do when we're interested. And it's amazing what we will avoid when we are not interested. And so that little lesson, which I'll come back to hopefully in a bit, would be a real game changer during that time. And I began being more interested in learning and being helpful and being of service. And, my sense of worth and value came together. I don't want to tell you too much. You'll find out in the book about my life, but, certain things really ripened in my life. And eventually one of my friends, so-called best friends, thought I would be good working with adolescents in treatment. Adolescents and drug addiction at a fancy hospital in Burbank, California. And, I sit there and think, anyone who knew me back then, I don't think you would think I would be good working with adolescents in treatment. I'm a blue collar guy, auto mechanic, we're the kind of people who send a blowtorch underneath the bathroom stall when somebody's on a toilet. Like, you shouldn't put us around children. And we were good spirited people, but we're a little rough around the edges a bit. And but he said, no, I think you'll be good at this. So anyway, I interviewed at this hospital with a psychiatrist, and I had to learn how to tie a tie and go sit for an interview. I was terrified. And sitting on my hands because I got grease under my fingernails. And, I'm in this very professional setting, and I interviewed, and they gave me a job. They have like what's being called a tech, where you kind of make sure the kids get where they need to go, and you kind of supervise and make sure nobody do anything harmful. And that was my entry point. And I brought the same attitude. How can I be helpful? How can I be helpful? And what turned out, I was pretty good at it. And I went to school, became a counselor at UCLA, got a substance abuse counselor certificate, and turned out I was pretty good at that, and eventually would run an 80 resident adolescent facility, and then wind up actually leaving all that to become a school teacher. I taught high school, and if anyone would have thought John Bruno was going to teach high school, and I barely went to school, and have an opportunity. So I taught high school in North Long Beach and Compton area, right on the border, in what people would consider pretty rough area in LA. And I had the opportunity to work with these kids who are a lot like me when I was younger and give them some opportunities. And that was really, I thought I would do this for the rest of my life. It was so wonderful. I actually got to take some of these kids to Europe. We raised money, started a nonprofit little thing, and exposed them to the world out there. Started programs within our school where they got to, experience things. One of my students did an internship in the White House. These kids, there's a young black man from Compton who did an internship in the White House, has college degrees, and just letting them know that there's a whole world out there that's available that, we don't know about until we open some doors. And so, yeah, I thought I'd do that. And then I did wind up meeting an old Tibetan Buddhist Lama who became my teacher. He lived in Long Beach and he brainwashed me. And so from that point, I met His Holiness Dalai Lama. I became a monk. I actually taught high school in Buddhist robes. The last 3 years of my teaching career, I was in Buddhist robes in the classroom. And that was quite remarkable. And then I went on and worked for the monastery and traveled. That's where I met Chuck, traveling with the monks and Unity down there in Naples. And the opportunity to be of service in that way was meaningful. Eventually, it would come to an end. My teacher gave me the advice. So this is really what happens. My teacher had given me some advice before he passed away. He said, when this tour finishes, go do your practice, go do your training. And because otherwise I would just be on tour for the rest of my life and not able to engage in these retreat practices that was important. So he passed, and I finished the tour, and then returned my monastic robes, and then went and trained with a Tibetan Buddhist teacher in a lineage of retreat practice and meditation. And so just as a layperson. And so that began the next phase. And then one of the things that's been asked of me was to write this book. And the book that you're about to engage in really responds to, I think, a question that has always baffled me. And when I reflect on it, and I think all of you might know that all of you, right? All of you can make a list of 5 things to do to improve your life, right? I mean, can anybody not make that list? Here's 5 things I can do that would absolutely improve my life, things I know I can do. I mean, make my life better. It's clear. I get it. I understand it. I can do this. And then the big question is, why don't I do it? Why do I resist doing things I absolutely know will improve the quality of my life? And so that was this big question over these many years of practice. That what is it that creates the resistance to doing things that I know will absolutely improve my life? And so in the very opening of the book, the very first quote is, "The search for happiness is the cause of much unhappiness." And it's this idea that I can feel good pretty easy. There's lots of things I can do to feel good. And the things that I know will improve my life require some effort. And, what's that? Delayed gratification. And they've tried to teach me that when I was a kid, didn't work very well. And so, and so the book is really about how do we remove the resistance and unlock our inner wisdom, our potential that's already there. It's already there. We already know it's available. It's yelling at us so often. And, we can't hear it very well because my human condition here, wants to go eat pizza and ice cream, and you know, not really cultivate all these qualities. And it's so easy to, just engage in stimulus driven pleasures and the misperception of life, that my happiness is going to be a result of, getting the right environment, the right job, the right friends, the right, relationships, right, situations in my life that I can create all those and then I'll be happy. And and when we look around, we start to realize, wow, I know people with nice houses, nice cars, long marriages, careers, and they still have stress, worry, fear, anxiety, and struggles. And they still get old and die. And you sit there and go, I don't think that recipe's worked for anybody. We'll notice the ups and downs of our lives in this system that says, if I eat right and exercise, I'll live long and be healthy. If I, manage my job just so it'll be okay. And if I maintain my car, it won't break down. And then we discover my car can break down anyway. It can be brand new and have a recall. That my relationships, yeah, they might be good, but they have struggles. They have ups and downs. I can get cancer, or I can, get a surgery, or I can have an accident. In other words, eating right and exercising doesn't ensure I won't break a leg, doesn't ensure that I won't get hit by a car, doesn't, mean any of those things. That life is actually messy, right? Life is messy. And my fundamental cause of the vast majority of my suffering is that I think I can make my life not messy. Right? My car shouldn't break down. My relationship should be fine. My job shouldn't change. These things. And what's fascinating, going back to Chuck C's book and another book called The Road Less Traveled, which you may have heard of, the primary thing there, Scott Peck, is once you understand that life's messy, it's no longer difficult. Right? His words are, when you recognize that life is difficult, you transcend it. It's no longer difficult. Life's not difficult at all when I know it's messy. Where life gets difficult is I don't think my life should be messy. Right? And, when the car doesn't start, oh my gosh, this isn't right. Versus there's a whole industry called auto repair out there. And it's based on the ideas that sometimes cars don't start. But I'm shocked when mine doesn't. Right? And I sit there and go, yeah, why me? Well, why not me? And what's the opportunity? And the opportunity is to unlock this vast potential that's already within us, that is not dependent upon things going the way I think they should be, but rather unfolding in ways far beyond my human mind can really comprehend. That within us is our divine nature, our primordial wisdom that is always available, always accessible. And what's blocking it is a sense of my own personality and limitations of John that is trying to arrange the world in the way John wants it to be. And not recognizing that underneath that limitation is this incredible divine wisdom that's always available to guide. It's what lets me know that there's all these things I can do to improve my life, but John's more interested in popcorn and Netflix. And instead of complete liberation and well-being and infinite freedom. Yeah, that takes some work. Uh, and and so this book is this guidance over all these years about how to listen more, how to access more, how to reduce the resistance to accessing that ultimate nature that's already available. And how do we start engaging in some practices where we can reduce that grasping to an ego in a way that, it just don't exist. My anxiety, my fear, my stress is not me at all. Those are mental and emotional states that come and go and are not who I am. But I identify with them. I'll sit there and say, I'm anxious. I have anxiety. No, I'm not anxious. I'm experiencing anxiety. I'm experiencing anxiety. It will come, it will go. Still going to be here. And so the identification with a bunch of mental afflictions in a human condition is not who we are. It's just what we're experiencing. And how do we reduce the identification process and start embracing this primordial nature that's has always been available, and it speaks to us, and one way that it's easy to access that I think that might be helpful is there's a little short thing that I teach people, and we've all had situations, I think, in our lives where we go, yeah, I just don't know what to do. I had a guy I was talking to, he's on the phone, he's in all this emotional duress, he's going through some big struggles, and he said, I don't know what to do. And it struck me that, that's not true. That is absolutely not true. It just hit me. And it was this little revelation. And I said to him, he's struggling. I said, what do you think would be a healthy thing to do? And he had an answer. And I said, well, why don't you try that? Which, he's upset about because, he kind of caught up in the drama of it all. But what occurred to me is if we, and this is an exercise that people do in any time and they're, caught up in some struggle, if you can take a few breaths, center yourself, bring the situation to mind, and then step back from it, right? Step back from it and ask a very simple question. In this situation, what would be a healthy thing to do? Objectively, not ask, what should I do? Because I don't have a good answer for that. But get the I out of it. Get the ego out of it. Just sit back and ask a very simple objective question. Not what's the right thing to do. What's a healthy thing to do here? And you will find 99 point whatever point times, you're going to have a good answer. You're going to have a really good answer of what would be objectively a healthy thing to do. And then the next question is, where'd that come from? I got my ego out of the way and I just became open to a question. And we'll find, and I found this with people in 1 week of recovery from drug addiction are able to have a good answer. And it's an answer that's not available when I'm asking, what should I do? It's not available when I say, what's the right thing to do? It is available when I get that stuff out of the way and simply ask in this situation, what would be a healthy thing to do? And then, we have a good answer. So I use that as an access point to our divine nature, our wisdom. It's available. It's speaking to us. It's guiding us. Now, I may not be able to do the healthy thing. That's a different level, right? But sometimes we can, right? Sometimes, we have this really, of course, healthy thing to do this. I'm not ready to do that yet. But maybe I am. And so there's this journey that we can engage in of developing some structure and some ability to still our mind, to notice the impermanent nature of thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and the identification of a persona that we limit ourselves with. And to recognize that's not who we are. We are that which is aware of the anxiety or the joy or the struggle or the adventure. We are that which is aware of this human condition. And that's unfolding, and there's guidance available. But we have to learn how to listen, right? Because generally I'm listening to my persona of I like to think of this this mind, you know, when I'm trying to train the mind with wisdom. I have this little 16-year-old maniac who's very, you know, he's got a lot of ideas what to do. And, you know, most of which would probably get me arrested, but he's like trying to convince you it's worth it. And you know, let's go do this, you know, it's looking for excitement, you know, and so I don't let him drive my car very often these days, you know. And so what we find is, you know, basically we have this mind-body experience, and it's being conditioned through our way of being, our experiences, the traumas we've experienced, the joys and it's keeping score on what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and it's being habituated, and it's making decisions for us subconsciously all the time. You know, that's why we react. That's why we have these sensations in our body when somebody says something. And so it's operating on this unconscious level. And what we get to do is become conscious, become a participant in this experience more, and have a choice about how we respond, how we engage, how we utilize the sensations that arise in our body and mind, and put ourselves in the driver's seat a little more, just a little more. And it's, you know, it's a journey. And, you know, my 16-year-old still wants to get in the driver's seat and take me for a spin. And, you know, so every now and then I notice that. And I try to scoot over. But so anyway, that's in general a little background on me and kind of the philosophy of things that I've learned over these years. And what I've tried to put in the book was the guidance, the lessons I've learned over my time, and it's not, it's learned from, you know, sometimes wise elder ladies in a laundromat, you know, being parents, you know, sometimes learn from my mom, sometimes, you know, it's just these culmination of life lessons of wisdom teachers in my life, some of which, yeah, were yogis, some of which were single working moms, some of which were, you know, Joe Louie at the garage there, you know, and then we have these bits of wisdom that we can extract from people who have overcome struggles in their lives. And some universal wisdom, which always comes down to a very simple truth. The genuine happiness we seek doesn't come from, you know, chasing things to make us feel good. It comes from doing things we feel good about. And if we can just learn that fundamental lesson and then act upon it more often, everything transforms. So I don't need to change the world. I got to change me. And then my whole experience of the world changes. You know, trying to get you to do what I want is pretty challenging. You guys are not very cooperative. But if I can change how I experience you, man, it's so much easier. So much easier. If I can be interested in the opportunity of learning from you, that's pretty cool. So that's a little bit of an introduction. Hopefully, as you engage in the book, you'll find something helpful.
Thank you so much, John, for joining us this morning. And it was full of a lot of really interesting stuff that I'm sure a lot of us will try to remember. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask John while he's here amongst us? Anyone? Chuck, you're muted, Chuck. You'll have to unmute.
And after Chuck, Nancy had her hand up as well. Actually, Chuck might be a while. Hey, Nancy.
Nancy, go ahead, ask your question.
Okay, 100%. Like, that's just great to hear. Now, I'm wondering, how can I be of service versus what's going to make me happy? If there's a difference in being raised as a woman, in knowing that we're supposed to serve, we are supposed to put other people's happiness above ours, and what can I do to help others? I wonder if you could comment on that, because that's something for a lot of myself and others. That was just the way we were to consider others before ourselves and to be of service.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that can cause some real problems.
Absolutely.
Not having
Absolutely.
boundaries.
Yeah. And so when we think about, and you'll find in the book, this act of loving kindness, it always begins with us. I'm not very capable of serving you if I'm not healthy and well. And so this idea of loving kindness, of, first off, also stimulus-driven pleasure, like, a cup of coffee I just had, or doing something fun like dinner with friends, that can be also um, cultivating genuine happiness. The only difference between doing something that makes us feel good and doing something we feel good about, well, they can be both, right? I can have dinner with friends and it's doing something I feel good about and it feels good, right? So they're not exclusive. As a matter of fact, many of the things that make us feel good are also contributing to our genuine happiness. We feel good about. They're in alignment with our values. And so that's going to be the core of the book, is how do we live in alignment with our core, deepest values? That's where we're going to find this union of genuine happiness. And so if I'm putting people above myself in an unhealthy way, two things are happening. One is I'm not offering loving kindness. If I have, if I'm enabling a behavior that's unhealthy, that's not an act of loving kindness. Loving kindness is the desire for ourselves and others to be happy and a willingness to extend ourselves for their growth. And so I relate it to my time as a parent. If I were to let my daughter do everything she wanted, my daughter would have OD'd on Peeps and Coca-Cola in a room that was a full mess, right? But as a parent, right, we have boundaries and we have structure and we engage in a healthy relationship with our children to be models of healthy beings so that they can suffer and have joy with structure and consequences. And likewise, in service to others, my highest service is going to be out of loving kindness and compassion. And in order for that to exist, first off, I need to make sure my commitment to you is a healthy relationship. That I show up in the healthiest possible way for us to have a healthy, and sometimes that's a boundary. The most loving kind thing I can do is a boundary, but not with the idea of harm, but with the idea that we learn how to treat each other better. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I was just wondering because, as I said, that question of, what can I do to be happy? I think, given my background and that, it was like, that was never even an option to think about. And then it has been. I mean, I got it. Boundaries is what I learned about in my late teens, early 20s. And that was great. That was so helpful. But I love that you said loving kindness. I love that as the guiding principle, and knowing about, what is actually the loving thing to do. What does, not just what I'm feeling, but what the other person needs as well. And the balance there. And then going inside for wisdom to take the action.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, on a personal level, I have a parent and an uncle, both of whom have two different kinds of dementia. And, you could so easily lose sight of what's healthy and what isn't for
Yeah.
myself. Yeah.
Mm.
So,
And self-care is critical. It's the
Mhm.
foundation. You can't offer any help unless we have self-care.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Great question. Chuck, you had,
Yeah, hi, John. I don't really have a question, but I just want to say that many beneficial things I've learned from your teachings. And one of them was in Naples when it was really hot, the height of the tourist season, and traffic was horrendous. And you get so upset in that traffic. And one day you were saying, well, hold on, just stop and be in the present moment in that traffic. You're sitting in a beautiful air conditioned car, you've got really nice tunes playing, and you're in leather seats. You know, calm down. I mean, none of this agitation is going to make you not late for the meeting you were going to. You're still going to be late, so just accept that. But I do that now over the years. Every time I'm stuck in traffic in the winter, I'm in a nice warm car. I've got the radio on. I've got heated leather seats now,
Ooh.
and life is good. And so all those little things, nuggets that we accumulate, really help to make a better life. And I really appreciate all that I've learned from you. Thanks.
Thanks,
Mm.
Chuck. We'll add one more thing to the traffic. Not only are you in a nice car with music and all that, but you're not stuck in traffic. You are traffic.
Yeah.
And we're all trying to get somewhere. And,
Right.
that's a different frame of mind.
Mhm.
Yeah.
anyone else have a question, John? Tony?
Not so much a question, but a comment further to what you were saying, sitting in traffic and just going with the flow. The problem is I gotta really pee. What am I gonna do in this particular case?
Yeah, it's good to have a jug with you. No, just side funny story. I was following my friend. We're moving his house, so he's moving. I've got the truck. We've loaded it all up. It's one of the hottest days of the year in Southern California, and it's before all the cell phone stuff. And I don't know where we're going, so I have to follow him. And I'm driving the truck, and I have to pee, and I'm on a freeway, and I can't pull over because I'll lose him. I don't know where he's going. Never do that unless you know where you're going. I did have a bottle, and it was a bit of an adventure on the freeway, and we survived. But yeah, it's good to have a backup. Yeah.
I do have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep. Now I can.
Okay, sure. Yes, I'm trying to remember, as far as your journey, and you've spoken about your journey, and all of a sudden you were asked to go back to your practices, to go back to your teachings of your own Tibetan teacher. How did you separate that life to that new life that you once had or were practicing, and then because of course a lot of things would probably have gone through your mind. For myself, it would. So how would you have taken that and then just be in the present moment at most times, when knowing that you've, dealt with all these, parenthood and jobs and name it. Now you're leaving that a little bit behind, but not all of it, to go and practice more into what you're being called for. How was that for you?
Yeah, my transition have been pretty easy, actually. It's been fairly natural. So prior to becoming a monk, I was a school teacher and I was learning these teachings, I was applying them. And then my teacher, before he took me to be a monk, there was a year transition. So I had this year to learn. He had monks talk to me and dispel all the myths that I'm going to have this peaceful, wonderful monk life. They said, now here's the real deal. You're going to have to work with your mind. You're going to have to deal with others.
Yeah.
And so there was this nice, he educated me. And so I was better prepared.
Right.
And then coming out of monastic life, I still live very much like a monk. I only lived off of offerings. I engaged in retreats, and I would be asked to go teach places. I came up to Ontario there, and we did a retreat. and I only lived off of offerings at that time.
Oh.
And then I met the woman who'd become my wife now. And that was a transition. Because now I needed a job. And householder and
Right.
yeah, and then how do you have a relationship? I hadn't had one in many years. So that was a bit of work. And so now, yeah, but I get to teach, mindfulness and these types of things and run a Dharma center. But yeah, that was for me, I've just found that if I just uh, take the opportunities, recovery and those trainings and meditation led me to monastic. And basically the way I view life with the understanding of impermanence is that life's always unfolding,
Yes. Yeah.
right? As long as I don't get stuck on an outcome.
Mm. No, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
John, I'm wondering if you can share with us what your daily spiritual practices are.
I wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and I take some time every morning for my practice. So I study in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition and lineage, so I have certain practices that have been, transmitted. So from 4 to about 6 in the morning, I'm engaged in my own practice. So that includes meditation, some visualization and prayers that are part of our lineage and aspirations to be a benefit of all. Our primary practice in the Tibetan lineage is that of a bodhisattva, that we are dedicating our lives to help all others be free of suffering. So that's the prime motivator. And then, all these practices are about identifying more with that primordial wisdom instead of this little John guy here. And how do I access that? So meditation is allowing that access to in Tibetan Buddhism, having access to and learning to identify more with your primordial wisdom than with this human form of John cruising around all the time. Tapping into that and holding that view as much as possible. That identifying more with the awareness of what I'm doing than the human form doing it. And so I've had these trainings over the years and practices, whatever you can call it, learning how to stabilize the mind and tap in more to that. And so that's my first couple hours in the morning. And then in the morning, every day I record a morning practice for our students for the next day. So I actually record a guided practice every day. And we post it in our little group, Way of Compassion Dharma Center. And so I record that for them every day. And then actually for our mindfulness too, I record a teaching. So much of my morning is all that. And then 7 o'clock, I'm usually at some group or thing, which I just finished. We did a study group just before this. And then I get to engage in the day. And then the structure of the day, which I recommend in the book, is to set a clear intention about something you are working on, that you want to set your GPS for the day. This is what I'm cultivating in my life right now. And check in multiple times a day to remind yourself and to note the progress. And then every evening, a review of how you're doing and what you'd like to purify or cleanse or learn from. So those steps are in the book. My current practice right now is I just turned 63 yesterday as my birthday. And yeah, and today's my daughter's birthday. So I was thinking about what's the greatest gift I can give myself. And so my practice right now is giving myself the gift of virtue. I think the best gift I can give myself is to engage with myself and others with ethics and virtue, and to avoid doing unhealthy, non-virtuous things. and seeing that as not an effort, not a work, but rather a gift. When my mind wants to go to some afflicted state, I'm going to give myself a gift of virtue, of kindness, of compassion. And all spiritual traditions, I'm sure that you probably have looked into this, is the basis for our spiritual growth is virtuous activity, and that's what fertilizes the wisdom and allows us to access things, good, healthy, wholesome behavior. And so that's my intention for the day, is I'm going to keep track of whether I'm giving myself that gift or not, or if I'm being a little selfish, self-centered, and it's funny, selfish and self-centered is actually robbing me from freedom and happiness. It's weird things, and am I being engaged in self-care instead of self-centered? Am I being engaged in something that's healthy and productive and meaningful instead of selfish and anxiety driven? So yeah, so anyway, so I set an intention for the day, and then I check in throughout the day. So I'm mindful, trying to be mindful of that. And then in the evening, I, a little check-in of, what did I learn today? What's been helpful? What would I like to improve? And in the book, it'll be offering that sort of a method. And so that way we become an active participant in who we become. So much of who we become is just left to circumstances, our environment, what's going on in our body and mind and our stuff. But if we set a clear intention, it's like setting a GPS, this is where I'm headed. And then when I check in, I recalculate. Oh yeah, wait, I'm supposed to be doing this. I've been doing that. And then it's me becoming an active, conscious participant in the types of thoughts and attitudes that I nurture and grow in my life, instead of an innocent bystander just, being victimized by a 16-year-old maniac and a bunch of just unconscious habituation of mind-body biology that is just running my life. Now I get to check in and get in the driver's seat and be a participant in who I become. And then, in the evening, I kind of learn those lessons. And then next day, I start again with meditation, with clarity of mind, remembering this purpose, practicing, and trying to maintain that through the day.
Thank you so much, John. We normally will be finishing, so we are so grateful for your participation today and your patience with our questions, and we look forward very much to studying your book. Chuck, did you want to finish with anything?
No, I just really appreciate you, John, for doing this. And I remember the retreat in upstate New York when, we were all strangers basically when we met, but it was such a loving experience. And we walked to that pond, and it was a spring-fed pond in the mountains, and it's just a memory that never leaves me. And I just thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Chuck, and thank you all for all the good that you all bring to the world. It's beautiful. Appreciate you.
Pauline, I don't know if you would be able to pray us out.
I can. I feel a little embarrassed in front of a Buddhist monk, but remember John Bruno when he came to do the retreat in 2014 at the Michaelite House outside London. And it was a wondrous experience. So we gather together today in spirit, divine presence of each one of us, opening up to John's loving, mindful sharing. And we recognize our opportunity to be loving kindness in this world. we realize that our lives are all so different, all involving ups and downs. And yet, one constant is that we are loving kindness. Each one of us called in our way to make a difference, to be a difference. For this, we're truly grateful. And we promise, as we read this book about mindfulness, to practice what it holds in our lives every day. With gratitude and appreciation to John, to Chuck, and to Lorraine, and to all who are present, we say amen.
Thank you so much, everybody. Blessings to you all for the week.
Thank you. Beautiful, Pauline. Appreciate it. Please be
Thanks,
well. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.